Oh, that's fine. And then I have, once you're situated, Grant. Oh, yeah, it does look like it all changed, doesn't it? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and call to order this Livingston City Commission meeting on July 16th at 5:32 PM. Roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
Here.
Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Commissioner Willich,
Here.
you have quorum.
Thank you. And we'll just for the record say that Commissioner Schwartz and Commissioner Newt are excused this evening. So we'll go ahead and start our meeting like we do all our meetings with general public comment. Individuals are reminding that public comment should be limited to items over which the city commission has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. This would be the time to make public comment on items that are not on the agenda or anything in that consent item section at the very beginning of the agenda. So if you'd like to make a public comment, please feel free to come right up to the podium here. No one in the room? Okay, then we will go to online. Is there anyone online that would like to make general public comment? You can raise your hand, or if not, feel free to come off mute and give us your name. One more time, anyone for public comment online? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close general public comment. And commissioners, of course, generally we start with consent items. I'm going to move consent items to the end of the agenda this evening. There's a few things in our consent item that are sort of based on us having a budget. So I'm going to wait until we get to that item before we do the consent items, if that'll work with everybody. So we'll go ahead and move on to proclamations. So let me get to that page. So we have one proclamation this evening. And this is a proclamation of the Livingston City Commission designation of July 19th as Parks and Recreation Professionals Day. I see Maggie in the room. Maggie, is there anyone else with us this evening?
Everybody's working or recreating.
Okay, well, thank you for being with us. And if you'd like to stand up, you can, but it's kind of weird to be by yourself. So up to you. But I'll go ahead and read our proclamation. Whereas the Livingston City Commission recognizes that the Parks and Recreation field is a diverse and comprehensive system that improves personal, social, environmental, and economic health. And whereas the Livingston City Commission recognizes the importance and benefits of park and recreation services that enrich the lives of its citizens and help make this community a desirable place to live, work, and visit. And whereas the Livingston City Commission supports the skilled work of park and recreation professionals to strengthen community cohesion and resiliency, connect people with nature and each other, and provide and promote opportunities for healthy living, social equity, and environmental sustainability. And whereas the Livingston City Commission values the essential services that park and recreation professionals and volunteers perform to provide recreational and departmental enrichment for our children, youth, adults, and older adults, and to ensure our parks and recreation space are clear, safe, inclusive, welcoming, and ready to use. Now, therefore, be it resolved on behalf of the Livingston City Commission, I, Carrie Kale, Chair, do hereby declare July 19th, 2024 as Parks and Recreation Professionals Day in Livingston, Montana. Mr. Gager, any comments?
Thank you, Chair Kale. We have a very dedicated team of park and recreation professionals here, and we're very lucky in the city of Livingston to have Maggie and Mike and everyone else out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Commissioners, anything?
I love our parks, and I hope everybody goes and visits them. We have a lot of them.
Mhm.
I also love our parks and have this to show for it. Thanks for all the wonderful opportunities to recreate in town.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's go ahead then and move on to our first action item this evening. Sure. So action item A. So ordinance 3054, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending section 30.13 of the Livingston Municipal Code entitled Official Zoning Map of the City of Livingston by establishing a gateway overlay zoning district that includes certain properties. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you folks tonight is the first reading of ordinance 3054, which would amend the official zoning map of the City of Livingston to create gateway overlay zoning districts. And this action comes as one of the suggestions from the Great West Engineering report that folks may recall from November of 2023, when the Community Technical Assistance Program run by the State Department of Commerce provided us with access to Great West Engineering, who did an initial review of our municipal code zoning provisions in conjunction with the growth policy. And this was, again, one of those key recommendations. And as noted in the staff report, the creation of gateway overlay zones is very strongly supported by the growth policy. And so before you this evening is an amendment to the official zoning map. We are not here for a zoning text amendment, which would change the language of the proposed adoption or expansion of the building design standards. Rather, we're just discussing where those building design standards would be applicable. To the extent that the commission would want to modify those building design standards, that would be a subsequent action under a text amendment. So again, the operation here tonight is a map amendment, and if it pleases the commission, I would introduce Jen Severson, our planning director, for a brief summary of the proposed amendment.
Good evening, commissioners.
Good evening, Jen.
I prepared a short little succinct PowerPoint for you. So I've tried to just hit on the key points in this. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions from the supporting documents and the staff report. But as Mr. Gager said, this is a zoning map amendment. It is for the creation or identification, if you will, of the parcels to be included in a gateway overlay zoning district. And on the map that you see right there, this was also in your packet. The blue parcels are the proposed, there's 49 parcels we're proposing to be included in the gateway overlay district. It's 3 different areas at key entry and exit points into the community, but it's all one gateway overlay district. And then the rest of it is just within city limits right there. So the purpose of this map amendment, as I said, is to identify the parcels to be included in that. It's officially creating the mapped gateway overlay district. There is plenty in our growth policy to support this and recommend this. As Mr. Gager said, also the Community Technical Assistance Program help that we got earlier acknowledged that this was in the growth policy and recommended to move forward with mapping it. As did the Gateway Visioning Workshop that we had, I believe it was in February, to go over the gateway areas that were kind of identified in general in the growth policy and to get an idea of what people kind of wanted to see there. So our purpose is to map these to create that district. So it's a regulatory district. And then also to provide that framework to regulate the design of future commercial development or redevelopment in these gateway areas. So we have the regulations. This is the map that's saying here's where they'll be applied. So growth policy includes recommendations related to this. One is identifying community gateways at key entry exit points to the city. So exhibit 3.2, the special districts map in your in the growth policy, which is this, kind of started this all. Those areas in bright Kelly green, I guess you'd call them, are identified as gateway overlay zones. if you'll notice there, it includes areas that are not within the city. So we only have jurisdiction over what is in the city of Livingston. So if you go back to the slide before, that's one thing. We also had the gateway visioning workshop to identify those gateways, kind of what we wanted to see. Another thing the growth policy recommended was to establish the building design standards. Those actually were already done. They were in the code in 2007, and then they were updated again into 2021 after the growth policy was adopted. And then the last thing, sort of, we've done these other two, we've looked at this, but is to adopt a design overlay zone where the design standards in 3046 are enforced. That requires the map amendment. That is why we're bringing this to you tonight. And that map amendment will mean that that overlay zoning district is established. We just have to amend the zoning map first. So that's why it's coming before you. As I said, in blue, there's 49 parcels in the proposed gateway overlay zoning district. And if you'll go to the next slide, there's a couple of key differences from that special districts map, those green areas in the growth policy, and what we are recommending be included in those gateway areas. Again, we didn't think it made a lot of sense we're not able to, we legally cannot place zoning on parcels that are not within our jurisdiction. So, we only included parcels that are within the city limits. That also includes parcels that may not have been identified at the time as being in that green gateway zoning overlay area, but have been annexed since. Also, there were some parcels that we noticed that maybe had some development on them already that were within the city limits that weren't included, but they're commercially zoned. So we did include parcels in those gateway areas that are zoned primarily for commercial uses. And then we also, again, when we looked at it, it kind of made sense. If you're getting off at exit 333, right? There's just as much of a gateway, depending on where you're coming from, if you're just heading north from there versus south to the park. So the original special districts map did not show anything at exit 333 north of I-90. And we did propose to select those parcels that are, again, zoned primarily for commercial uses. There's like a mixed use, most of it's highway commercial, to be included here. We excluded parcels shown on the west, or we're proposing to exclude parcels that are on that growth policy special districts map that are outside the city limits. That includes the ETJ, no jurisdiction over that. Anything that was, there were some of those parcels that were zoned primarily for residential use. Didn't make a lot of sense to us because the design standards, as it says, only apply to commercial uses, or I think it says industrial uses, large scale retail. So we removed any residentially zoned parcels in that area from being subject to the design standards and not including them in the gateway overlay. And then also we excluded parcels that are near the eastern gateway, but west, sorry, that should say east of the Yellowstone, no, west. Too much coffee. West of the Yellowstone River. So basically on the KPRK side, the Bennett Street side, there were a couple of parcels that were identified. If you're coming off that exit, the 337, you're hitting the outskirts of Livingston when you get to the hospital. So once you kind of pass over into there, you're already in Livingston. So we wanted to kind of focus that gateway overlay efforts on what you're seeing when you first come into the city. Next slide. This is just, I won't go over each one. This is identified in your staff report, the criteria according to Montana Code Annotated for zoning regulations. In your staff packet, I've under each of these explained how I believe the proposed map amendment meets these criterias and complies with these criteria. I'm happy to, again, if you want me to address specific ones, but for time's sake, it's in the packet. And then last, let's see. So yeah, so our recommendation, as is also on the first page of your staff report, we find this proposed zoning map amendment. It complies with MCA state statutes, also with city statutes for zoning. It also supports the growth policy. At the June 24th Consolidated Land Use Board meeting, This was presented to them and they voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the zoning map amendment to the commission as proposed by staff, and the staff recommends that you accept the LUB's recommendation and move to approve the first reading of ordinance 3054 to amend the City of Livingston zoning code, section 30.13, related to the official zoning map, and to authorize the chair to sign ordinance 3054.
So at this point, the director and I will stand for any questions that the commission may have.
Great. Commissioner, questions?
I guess we're just talking specifically about the map borders and the parcels that are on that, correct? Is that what we're doing right on this one?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't actually have any more questions. Thank you.
You bet I do.
Bring it.
So when I looked at I wasn't able to attend the visioning session, but I thought that the synthesis of it was really helpful and enlightening. On page 110, I do see kind of like, well, let's just say that when I compare page 110 to the map, to the proposed map, it doesn't seem to line up super well. Particularly, there's a lot of points and consideration, like at the nexus between Highway 10 and 89. Where it comes together like this. And then also north of I think that's exit 333 on the south
I'm gonna
entrance.
grab my copy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pull that up on the screen.
Okay.
So you described two reasons for exclusion or like diversion from what was recommended in the growth policy, being primarily residential areas, and then also areas outside of the city limits. So those exclusions from the growth policy map make sense when I look at the proposal. There are, however, a couple spots where I don't quite understand.
Okay.
For example, on the north side of, I don't know if it's still Park Street out to the east. But across from the hospital.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what that's zoned, but you know, it's not, I mean, it's not a development at the moment. Kind of curious why that was excluded.
Mhm.
And then immediately north from exit 333 on the east side of the street, we have a number of parcels included, and then on the west side of the street, we don't. So those are kind of the two areas where I don't understand the omission from the map.
Do you want to wait and take all questions at once? I'm happy
No,
to.
let's, yeah, let's.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to kind of fill you in on our thought process when we look at this. So first of all, in the, across from the hospital, out on the east side of town, there's one little square that you'll see is blue on the proposed map to be included. That little square is actually zoned CBD.
Mm.
So it is zoned for commercial uses. All the rest of that land area is zoned, I want to say it's R1 and R3, or R1 and R2. It is zoned for residential uses. And so as, again, utilizing the design standards that are currently in place, the 3046, they only apply to commercial development and redevelopment and large scale retail, which is commercial, large scale retail anywhere in the city, which is over 30,000 square feet, 30 or 20. I'm sorry, I should know that, but it is not going to 3046 will not, or does not as it's written. And the intent, as I understand it, for why that was to be applied here was not for residential uses. So that's why we left the R1 and R3 parcels out. If somebody, let's say, were to come in and request that one of or both of those parcels be rezoned to a commercial zone, then at that time, we would also, if you were to recommend rezoning to a commercial zoning district, staff would at the same time concurrently recommend that it be added to the gateway overlay district so that the design standards for commercial development would be applicable. So that's why we removed those, again, residential. For north of 333, on the east side, there was nothing north of the I-90 and Park Street and 89 at that intersection in the original map that was in the growth policy.
Isn't that interchange? Okay. It's
So
the
I'm-
interchange. Are you looking at
I'm-
this right here?
This is like the omission, but I can see that it's.
Where
zoned
am I- where am I?
residential.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, you're talking about Highway 10?
No, you were verbally describing the right place.
Okay, where Max meets is and where, yes. So, let's take the west side first. So there's that large mixed use parcel, which I believe is the campground right now. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So again, zone to allow commercial uses. It would allow, as it's zoned right now, for those retail commercial uses. So it made sense, to us to include that, because if you're coming in from Billings, let's say, and you get off there and you head north, that's your gateway. It's not south, right? If you're, of course, coming in anywhere and you're heading south on 89, that's your gateway. But, we felt like maybe it was a bit of a missed opportunity to also focus on the gateway for the people that are coming and heading north straight into our downtown. To provide that transition and there that a gateway would. Also the highway commercial that flanks it, that would be the Matt's Meats and the hotel that's to the north of Matt's Meats across from Rogers Lane. And then that little strip that there's nothing on it, but it's highway commercial. It's currently vacant, I believe.
Mhm.
That, again, currently is zoned highway commercial, so it made sense to us to include it in the mapped overlay. Because right now, as it's zoned, commercial uses could come in there. And those could even be larger scale retail. And on the other side, again, there is a house that's right there when you get off of that interchange heading north to the right, before you get to the hotels. However, it is zoned highway commercial. So even though its use currently is residential, the possibility that in the future they could sell it and it could be used to the highest of its, and under highway commercial was why we included that. And then as you keep going up there, it's all zoned highway commercial. We hit a stop at one point because it stops being a gateway, and then maybe in the future it's more of like a corridor plan. But that was just kind of what made sense to us when we were looking at it. Does that help?
It does. I'm gonna try and share back with you my understanding of the process. To make sure that I'm getting it. And then I'll go from there.
Mhm.
So the process is we're identifying the gateway overlay zone. Which right now is only applying to land uses that have a commercial or retail component, so excluding residential uses. It's a map amendment, meaning we're just saying this is where the zone is. And then the next step in the process will be a change to the ordinance stipulating what the standards are within that zone. Is that correct?
If, right now, we're using the ordinance that's in place. If the commission,
And
feels-
that's a design standard that applies ubiquitously throughout the city of Livingston.
No,
No.
actually, the 3046 applies to all large scale retail across the city, so throughout the city, regardless of whether it's in the gateway overlay zone. And the 3046, then it also says that it applies to commercial uses and industrial uses within a mapped gateway overlay zone, or it also calls it a design overlay district. So there are two kind of different terms. But it's talking about the same thing. So it's, yeah,
So, and then you described that if a parcel were to be changed from residential to something that included commercial or retail, that there would then be a subsequent process of consideration as to whether or not that would be included in the overlay zone.
I believe it would be concurrent. That I believe that we could bring that forward concurrently. If someone were to request a rezoning from R2, so let's say, to highway commercial. And at the same time, I believe staff would make the recommendation that if you approve that changing to a commercial zone, that it be added to the gateway overlay zoning district.
Would it be easier to make the overlay zone the vision, the geographic vision that we see for the overlay, and then the code is written such that it only applies to commercial and retail uses? So if something is zoned and being used as a residential, it de facto does not have those constraints. It seems to me like it could be cleaner and easier if we just identified those geographic boundaries as we envision them, instead of having to do this ad hoc process.
And may I say, I agree with that. However, where it becomes tricky is the visioning also, parts of the growth policy talk about anticipation of perhaps where the city will kind of fill in. One of those, for example, is perhaps along Highway 10 to the south. If in the future, if that area is annexed, we cannot apply any zoning. So we can't say our vision is if these properties are annexed in the future, that we will then add them. So it could totally work for anything that's in the city right now, and we can certainly do that, but anything outside the city, we can't.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So there is a geographic constraint to that vision, and it's constrained by the boundaries of the city limits.
Yes,
And I guess I'm veering into deliberation, but the question was, would it be feasible to include residential parcels in this round that are within the city limits, and then instead of doing that process of if it becomes commercial, then we do a zoning map amendment, just do that now.
I think that's really up to you. I don't see that it wouldn't be feasible for anything within the city,
That's all my.
but
If I may just interject briefly here, the process that you've described, Commissioner, is entirely possible and feasible. I would just offer that as far as timing of action, there would be very likely potentially some subsequent noticing that we might have to do for parcels and people within 300 feet of those
Correct.
changed parcels. So our boundary and our noticing was based on the map that's presented on page 77. But to the extent that we go farther out from that, we may not be able to act on that this evening. We may be required to go out and do some noticing and then do the first reading of the ordinance at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, gotcha. That's it for my questions. Thanks, Jen.
Okay. You asked a lot of my questions. Let me regroup a little bit. Jen or Mr. Gager, so as we talk about, as Commissioner Lyons brought up, if something is rezoned to commercial, and you brought before us both the rezoning and the gateway overlay zone, potentially a commission could split that, right? They could potentially say, we're gonna zone you where you want, but we're not gonna zone the gateway. Correct, okay, so just to think about that. If we, Mr. Gager, if we were to move forward with something like this tonight, as is, could we come back and add those parcels subsequently?
Absolutely, we certainly could under a subsequent map amendment. And if I may just kind of, maybe shed a little light on the deliberations that Jen and I had, and other staff members, Jen and others, as we were kind of creating this map. We recognize that these standards while we think that many of the buildings in the area comply with the design standards, we recognize there are some that aren't. But we also recognize the, just kind of the general agita that some members of the community feel with having additional regulations applied to their property and to, we felt to apply them to people's primary residence, properties that are zoned residential that are at this point developed, might add just a layer of consternation from some affected property owners that we wanted to avoid. And so for that reason also, we focused on the properties that are currently capable of hosting commercial or industrial uses by virtue of their zoning.
Yes. Just one thing to add to that, you just said properties that are developed already as residential. Going back to the area by Glass Baby, those large parcels, the other reason those were left out because they are vacant is because in the future land use map, they are open space. So to be consistent with that. My anticipation, I guess, was that we would not be looking at rezoning them commercial anytime soon.
Okay, another question from me. Just because I think it will be helpful, like for clarity for the public, because I did see one comment that was in the packet. Buildings that are already there. That are already established. Are grandfathered in under this, there's nothing that folks who already have a business have to do at this point.
That is correct. We call those pre-existing non-conforming structures, and there is no requirement to bring those into compliance. It is for new projects or other remodels of that require a building permit, really is how the language is phrased.
Okay, thank you. Jen, what do you see as, like, if this moves forward tonight and then subsequently, what are kind of next steps with this? Is there anything that might happen, or even Mr. Gager, I guess, what would be next steps past the map amendment?
Well, if the map amendment is adopted tonight and then at a second reading on August 6th, then it would become effective 30 days thereafter. And then as applications for building permits or site plan review came in, the team led by Jen would administer the design standards on each project that came in.
And I know that we're moving forward in a whole zoning update. If the commission decided that they wanted to then, because I think there was some questions about that, so I know we're looking at the map tonight.
Right.
But if the commission wanted to look at those design standards again, we could ask you to bring those before us again, or would you say, oh, we're gonna wait till we work through the zoning update? What would your thoughts on that be?
Generally speaking, we have been deferring changes to chapter 30 until this large zoning update, and we do expect that we'll put in a contract for the zoning update at the next meeting, and so that process is about to kick off. But that if there was something that was identified of an urgent nature, we would be happy to act upon that if the commission so directed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anything else? Any other questions?
Not for me.
Okay, so in general, I would ask for a motion and then we can move to public comment. Anyone?
I'll do it. I move to approve the first reading of ordinance 3054 to amend the City of Livingston zoning code section 30.13 related to the official zoning map and to authorize the chair to sign ordinance 3054.
The motion, do a second. I'm gonna second it so we can open it to public comment, so, okay. Okay, so now we will open it up to public comment and we'll start with folks in the room. I'm gonna remind folks before you come up, we do limit public comment to 4 minutes, so you have 4 minutes. There should be a sign-in sheet on the podium there and a pen, so we'd ask you to do that and just give us your name and address when you come up to the podium. And we'll start in the room. Anyone?
I haven't been to one of these before. Is public comment on any issue, anything?
No, so just what we're talking about right now, so this agenda item. And I will just let you know, we do general public comment at the beginning of each meeting for
Okay.
things not on the agenda, so that's always available at the beginning of the meeting.
So is the water increase?
That'll come up, yeah, that'll
Oh,
come
that's
up,
still
so,
come-
yep, we haven't got there yet.
Okay.
Yep, so you hang tight and we will come back to that. We will come to that. Okay, so I am not seeing any comment on this in the room, or Patricia? Patricia's coming up, okay.
Patricia Crable. Like you don't know me. 204 East Calendar Street. I have to make a public comment because I so endorse the commission approving this map tonight. I was at the land use hearings as well. And I heard the opposition, of course, to this map. And it's been such a long battle. It's been probably 10 years that we have really hoped and prayed that this would actually take place. And should it have taken place 10 years ago, we would be so much further ahead. But so very grateful that this has come up tonight and that this community is taking into consideration again, its view of its gestalt of the entire picture, so that when one comes to Livingston, one really sees the entire picture of what Livingston is. So I just wanted to make public comment tonight and say kudos, thank you for bringing this up. Thank you for hearing from the public on this. Thank you for getting back to the public on the details of it, and the journey is a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Anyone else in the room? All right, I'm gonna go online. Is there anyone online that would like to make public comment on ordinance 3054? You can raise your hand. And if that doesn't work, feel free to come off mute and give us your name and address. I'm gonna ask one more time, just to make sure we don't miss anyone. All right, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. Commissioners, deliberation.
I'm gonna hold off just a minute. Yield, Mr.
Would you like to start? Commissioner
Um,
Lyons?
Sure. So I think my questions kind of exposed my only concern,
Mhm.
which is just kind of the omission of some parts of town that have been identified as gateways. I understand, you know, it took me a while to get there, but I understand the reasoning behind leaving out residential or visioned open space. And my reservations about that, and I think this is something that I've said before, when we do this work, what we're trying to do is take a vision that's been done through the planning process of the production of the growth policy and through this, community exercise with the overlay visioning process, take that vision and turn it into policy. And I think, one of the reasons that I'm here is I want to help to enact that vision from the growth policy. And I see those omissions as, I get how we can get there kind of through these technical maneuvers later on down the road, but that seems like doing it backwards to me. And so I'm in favor of including as much as is reasonable that reflects the vision that was put forward in the growth policy and through this workshop. So I think that leaving out areas because right now they're zoned as residential, having the potential to cause more problems than it avoids today. Also, when I look at those areas that aren't included, I see those as places the market is likely to develop. And not in a residential way. When you have high traffic, those are some of the most high traffic parts of town. The highest use from an economic perspective is retail and commercial. So just because it's residential today, doesn't mean it's gonna be residential in the future. And so changing the way we apply the vision because today it's residential, kind of, to me, seems like it's missing the point of the exercise. So, while I wholeheartedly endorse what's trying to be achieved here, I think we could do it a little bit better, by including more of what was visioned in those two prior exercises. I'll yield for now.
Mr. Willett?
I think I understand what Commissioner Lyons is saying,
Mhm.
and I think I also agree with it. It's better to cast, I think, a wider net to capture more of what was originally considered than to try to add a piecemeal step later. And so if I think I'm understanding where you're going with that, how to do that here and now, I don't have that answer though. So
Yeah, so to do that. And Mr. Gager, correct me if I'm wrong. Not gonna cough. It would have to be renoticed.
I'm happy to step in here. Yeah, in order to adjust the boundaries, because this is not like a text amendment that has uniform impact. A map amendment has specific impact on people's lots, and so we need to actually notify not only the owners of every lot, but every owner of a lot within 300 feet of the border of any of those affected lots. And so if we start to expand the area of applicability for the map amendment, then we are also expanding the noticing area, that 300-foot area outwards. And so those people having not been appropriately noticed, we would not be able to, I would defer to the city attorney here, but it does not seem as though it would be in our interest to move forward with a map amendment encompassing additional parcels this evening. And then we would go through a noticing process, and my recollection of the timelines of noticing would push that action out until the first meeting in September at the very least, because I believe we would be beyond the 3 weeks for the next meeting for our noticing requirement.
Also, I'm not sure we have to go back to the land use board.
Yeah, so that part I'm comfortable on. It's more than noticing that I would push this action out at least until the first meeting in September, which is September 3rd. Yes, September 3rd.
And if I may.
Please.
Um. How would that impact any other, strategy related to our work on our zoning ordinance?
No, I don't think it would impact that. Really the primary impact would be to any applications that may come through in any of these affected areas between now and then. That would be the primary impact. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, Jen, for the cough drop, that's helpful. If we, to just kind of, I wanna kind of think all of this too, if we were to go back at this and expand some of this, are you gonna have to re-notice the folks that you've already noticed?
We would, just to segregate parcels is maybe a little more difficult to deduplicate and all that, so we would do a full renoticing would be my expectation. Yeah.
And now I'm being cheap, but so I'm just gonna think about dollars and cents here. If we moved forward with this as it is, and then went back and added, would you still have to renotice everybody?
No, we would be noticing the newly added parcels as well as everybody within 300 feet of those newly added parcels. And it's very likely, just looking at the map, that several landowners would drop out and not have to be noticed. Yeah.
So potentially, and I guess I don't know what the mailing is for noticing people, but potentially it would be more cost effective to do it now in 2 chunks than.
More cost and time effective, yeah.
I don't know who has the floor at this point, because we were just having a discussion, so I'll go back to you, Commissioner Willich, because I feel like we were there.
Well, this has been a long time coming, but I feel like it. Well. I yield. I'm not sure where I want to go quite yet with what I'm thinking.
Commissioner Lyons, anything?
I think that as a commission, we sometimes have the problem of letting perfect be the enemy of
Mhm.
good. And I don't wanna be the source of that today. The biggest issue that I see is the administrative burden on staff of the way that it's proposed and getting us to a better representation of the original vision. I trust staff's assessment that this achieves that vision as best as possible for the time being. So I won't stand in the way. In fact, I will be in favor of this if my fellow commissioners think that it's more prudent to move ahead today. But I think I do kind of want to be on the record that, like, when we're doing these kinds of exercises, I think it's better to have a more visionary approach than a parcel by parcel approach. I think that oftentimes that is something, it's a really common thing that happens in planning, is you think about what's here now. And you think about, well, what's here now dictates how we should think about the future, but that isn't how you should think about the future. You should think about the future true to the vision that you're hearing from the residents of Livingston. So I think this isn't that I don't think that this is like the best way to go about it, but it's still a step in the right direction, and I would relatively comfortably support it.
So I would say, I agree. I think that this is a step in the right direction, and I don't want perfect to get in the way of good. And we have been trying to get even to just this for a very long time, and I have a really hard time walking away from that right now. Like, I would really, I would like to see this move forward. I think it's incredibly important. But I would also wholeheartedly say to Mr. Gager and the staff that I would like then to see this come back again if we move this, if this moves forward tonight. I would like to see this come back again with those parcels included and take another bite at it. And you know, I also understand like the temperature of the community, right? Like if we try that next section of it and it just is like we get a lot of pushback, then we can look at that too. But I think I don't want to walk away from this, and I would happily ask to have this come back if we move this forward with additions. If that's what other commissioners would like to see.
I mean, if we have a framework to amend to,
Mhm.
then we're already ahead,
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. We're just we can just add to it.
right? Yeah, I got
Anything else, gentlemen? You feel comfortable with the vote? Okay. Roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
4,
Commissioner Lyons,
Four.
Commissioner Willedge.
for.
motion carries. All right, let's see, I'm looking at time, 6:30, so. Make sure, okay, so we're moving on to action item B. Resolution 5136, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, approving and adopting the final budget in the amount of $30,487,800 for the fiscal year beginning on July 1st, 2024 and ending on June 30th, 2025, FY 25, and making appropriations and establishing spending limits and authorizing transfer of appropriations within the same fund. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you, as you noted, is adoption of the final budget for fiscal 2025, which started 15 days ago. And as you may recall, we have discussed the budget on 2 previous meetings. And so Director Paige Federhoff and I stand ready to answer any questions you may have regarding the budget for folks in the room and online that may have missed some of the earlier meetings. I will point out some of the high points in this budget, which does continue the implementation of the growth policy that was started in last year's budget by providing some strategic investments in land use, placemaking and community character, housing, and resiliency. And I will detail some of those expenditures here shortly. But most importantly, we'd like to point out to the commission and remind the commission that the general fund is in balance and contains approximately 7.93 million in operating revenues to support 7.81 million in operating expenditures. So a net budget surplus of over 100,000, approximately 128,000 in the current year general fund. As I noted, the budget funds strategic initiatives in support of growth policy implementation, including funding an additional 40,000 to support the planning department in the development of policies and review of applications to ensure consistency with the growth policy. Similarly, we are carrying forward 125,000 from fiscal 24 to fund the overhaul of the city's zoning provisions of the Livingston Municipal Code. And as I noted, we expect that contract to come back or come before you in the next meeting for approval, which will kick off a year-long process to again review Chapter 30 of the municipal code. As far as placemaking and community character is concerned, the budget allocates 186,000 to expand the treatment of unpaved roads in the city. This is in partnership with the state's HB 355 from the last session, the State Local Infrastructure Act. And so the city will kick off a multi-year process in which we will expand the use of the permazyme treatment that was deployed in Green Acres this time last year. And by the end of all of this work, we should have few, if any, unpaved streets in the city of Livingston. All will be treated with this permazyme and chip seal over that, which provides a very firm, almost asphalt-like surface. Very excited about that. Similarly, the budget funds $145,000 to complete the design and installation of 3 rapid flashing beacons in the Park Street corridor, including at Main Street and Geyser, to help pedestrians safely transit across Park Street. Similarly, the budget utilizes $44,000 in local and state funding to continue our care for the urban forest and support not only the Livingston Loves Trees partnership, but also complete the tree inventory in the city of Livingston and deal with several of our hazard trees. And similarly, funding is carried forward for the development of wayfinding cultural and historic signage in the downtown area, as that is a recognized priority in the growth policy. On the housing front, the budget includes $25,000 to continue support for the housing coordinator position that provides support to our planning department and building department on housing initiatives in Park County, and this funding will be leveraged with private sector funding to help support the work there. In terms of resiliency, I'm pleased to affirm that the budget meets one of the commission's main priorities by providing $100,000 to support the establishment of a mobile crisis response team in Park County. And we are already actually working very diligently on that effort, and pleased to inform the commission that on yesterday, we were advised by the state that our crisis diversion grant was approved. And so that, yeah, it's very exciting. So the mobile crisis response team is now fully funded, and the fire chief and I are working to get that launched. We had some actually great conversations yesterday. It was a big day for mobile crisis response with a telehealth provider in the state that I think will enable us to launch this team shortly after Labor Day is my hope. Additionally, funding is included to support the city's cooperation in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Silver Jackets project, which will perform a levee breach analysis on the levee in Sacagawea and Miles Park. And that team was in town in early June for 10 days to take some measurements and monitor the river. And so we are again started on that initiative as well. Continuing the work in resilience, which we recognize takes many forms. This budget also includes $25,000 to support the operation of the warming center as was done in past years. And so there are in this $7.8 million of general fund spending, there are a great many other priorities of the commission and growth policy which are funded. And as I mentioned, Finance Director Federhoff and I will stand for any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gager. Commissioners, any questions? We've seen this a few times.
I think I've had everything answered. As far as the budget.
None from me.
None for you? I have none either, because I feel like this is the third time we've seen this, so we've had lots of questions answered. Thank you for all the work of you and the staff on this. It's a big lift. I would entertain a motion, and then we could go to public comment.
I'll move to approve resolution number 5136 and authorize the chair to sign.
A motion by Willich, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lyons, okay. So we'll go ahead and move now on to public comment. Again, reminder, 4 minutes. State your name and address and sign in at the podium. So anyone in the room that would like to make comments on the budget, the 2025 budget, please come up to the podium. All right, I don't see any, so we'll go online. there anyone online that would like to make comments on the 2025 budget? Again, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute and give us your name and address. Right, we'll ask one more time, and just give a second. I'll come back to you. Let me ask one more time and you can guess. Anyone online? Okay, I don't see anyone online. Would you like to come on up? And just sign in up here for me, please.
I'm Linda Moore. I live at 113 South M Street. And is there anything in the budget that's affecting the increases on these water and utility bills?
So we will take that question. Do you have any other questions or any other comments? And then I'll let you sit down and we'll answer.
Well,
question.
okay, so I'm not trying to bring in this yet.
Yep,
I'm just-
yep, yep.
So,
So if you have any other, yes, I will, we'll address that in public comment. We don't go back and forth. So just if there's any other questions that you have on the budget too, tell us now, and then we'll address all those. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, so close public comment, and then I will, Mr. Gager, can you answer that question?
Yes, I
Thank you.
can. So the budget, while I focused on the general fund highlights,
Mhm.
because that is our largest operating fund. And the one where there really is the most policy discretion involved. This action does include all of the funds, and so the short answer is yes. There are expenses within this budget that primarily capital expenditures that do help drive some of the rate increases that are included in subsequent actions this evening.
All right. So we've closed public comment. Commissioners deliberation.
Thank you for getting the mobile crisis response unit established, set up, funded. It's important to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you. And I appreciate all the rest of the work in the budget, a lot of work.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons. Okay. I will agree with Commissioner Willich. I'm ecstatic that we've got the mobile crisis unit up and funded and ready to go. I think it's something that this community has been asking for years. And I'm very happy to see this moving forward. So thank you for getting that moving and all the things that went into that. Thank you for all the things that have gone into this budget. I think we've said this, Mr. Gager, to you and your staff in the last few meetings, but I would like to just say it again, that every year the budget gets better, it gets easier to read, it's much more easy, it's very understandable. So thank you, Paige, so much, and Mr. Gager for all your work on this. And yeah, it's great work. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And just to be clear, you folks are the ones that funded mobile crisis response. We're simply operationalizing that on the side of the table.
You figured out how to make it work, so that was really important. Okay, anything else, gentlemen?
No.
Roll call, please.
Chair Kell,
4,
Commissioner Lyons,
4.
Commissioner Willich.
4.
motion passes. Okay, we are moving on to action item C. Resolution 5137, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, increasing all rates for all customers of the City of Livingston water system. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you is the recommended increase to water rates as derived from the budget. And as discussed in our previous meetings, the vast majority of our users, approximately 71%, fall into the lowest tier. And those users account for approximately 87% of the overall revenue. And so Director Federhoff and I will stand for any questions. But before I do that, I will clarify that the desired increase or the recommended increase begins at 5.6%, which is the observed rate of inflation over the prior 12 months. And so we do expect relatively minimal impact to our customers from this action. And so I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Willich, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Gager, what is the largest non-labor operational cost for the water department?
It is electricity.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Gager, do we have the authority and capacity to print our own legal tender?
No, sir. No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams?
So, Mr. Gager, you mentioned that, the rate is tied to observed inflation. Can you just give us some examples of how that manifests in the cost to provide water to residents? It's like how inflation over the past year has manifested in how it's impacted our costs in providing water to residents.
Yeah, absolutely. As Commissioner Willich, recognizes that electricity is our largest cost in the water department. Which, as you know, is a commodity which is sold on the open market, and we are captive to Northwestern Energy here in the city of Livingston. And so that being our largest cost, just as residential homeowners have experienced rate increases from Northwestern, as has the city. In addition, the city does treat the water that is pumped and delivered to homes, and the cost of chemicals similarly is a commodity that we are subject to on the open market, as with every consumer and private business out there. And it really goes on down the line, whether it's fuel in our vehicles or meters or pipe that we put in the ground, just as commercial construction projects and companies experience those types of cost inflations as we do here in the city. And so that really is the primary driver of our rate increases.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Gager, I think I asked you this at the last meeting, but I think it's important to keep bringing that question up. Do you envision, just so that we all understand from year to year, do you envision that rates will go up every year?
I do realistically expect that we will have rate increases every year. As we discussed, we have inflationary pressures that all companies face. But we also have capital needs from the system to maintain a state of good repair. And as a city that is approaching 140 years old, we've got some old infrastructure and some old pipes in the ground. And as we look at initiatives that may help densify parts of the downtown where we still have a lot of 4 and 6 inch water lines, we do expect that there will be not only replacement of those lines, but in some cases upsizing of those lines in the coming years. And so to be honest with the commission and with the community, yes, I do expect that we will have rate increases each year.
And the rates, besides just paying for the water that comes out of the pipe, pays for the pipes in the ground.
Exactly, yes. This, the water fund is really meant to be self-contained and fully funded by users, whether on the operating side and on the capital side. And please know, the team and I do take great pains to minimize the level of increase, which is why I am happy to say that, we really do expect the average increase to be anywhere from 85 cents to $2.85 a month per user. And a lot of people that are on that low end, a lot of single family residences, we do expect will see that additional 85 cents a month on their water bill.
And we have some very old pipes in town.
Yes, our team is frequently in the ground repairing breaks. I think you folks may remember the conversation from June when we had the water team in here and showing some pictures of the break on Yellowstone in May. So it's yeah, we've got a lot of work, but you know, we're working diligently on it.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner, any other questions?
I do have one more question.
Sure. Commissioner Welch?
And maybe this isn't off the top of the head knowledge. Over the last, say, 5 years, how many rate increases have we had? And what has been their percentage increase?
I might defer to our finance director for that question. That's a very, very fine question, Commissioner Welch. And had I been here for all 5 years, I would know the answer to that.
Sure.
I don't know the exact count of rate changes. I, off the top of my head, think we've had one pretty much every year since I've started in both water and sewer. That percentage has usually been around 3%, but our highest, I believe, was 10% in water. And I think that was last year, the year before, that we had a 10% increase.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Potter.
I have no more questions.
Okay. So if no more questions, I'd entertain a motion and then we could move on to public comment.
I'll move to approve resolution number 5137 and authorize the chair to sign.
We have a motion by Lyons. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Willich. Okay, so we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. And so just because I know folks have asked a little bit, we've got 3 things on the agenda tonight. This one is water. We will do sewer, and then we will do solid waste. And I believe it's in that order, but I will keep you updated. So feel free to come up to the podium. You're making a comment about water rates, if that's what you'd like to do. You've got 4 minutes. So please come on up.
Hello,
Hello.
um,
Can I
I've
get,
been in Livingston about,
can I get your name and address first, just so we know who we're talking to?
I'm Scott, Carlstrom.
Okay.
And I live over in Discovery Vista.
Okay.
You want my address or,
You can put it, you just, there, when you sign in, you can do that.
all right,
It's for the notes in the public record, so I would ask.
well, I have not been to one of these before. But I've been here about 10 years. And I have seen the rates go up pretty much as you guys described. And none of that seems out of line to me. It seems in line with inflation and increasing costs in general for infrastructure and utilities and maintaining them. But every time I see one of these increases, and so I've seen a lot of them in 10 years, it seems like it's almost doubled in 10 years. Just, my memory's imperfect, but it seems like it's about doubled in 10 years. So in general, I really like Livingston's water. It's decent water. I mean, some people soften their water to wash their clothes. I don't. So it's really good water. Good groundwater is rare in the West. So we should value it. The thing that comes to me is, if I think back to 2016, roughly, we certainly had a rough water year about then. And that was when whitefish were dying in the Yellowstone. And this summer seems to bring up those general sorts of thoughts in my mind. And one of the things that concerns me most is we're totally dependent on groundwater. And I know that we have 6 municipal wells. But I know, like a lot of us here, I live 2 lives, one in Bozeman and one here. And I know more just from reading the papers and so forth about Bozeman's water supply and its adequacy than I do about Livingston. And I think maybe this is being done, maybe it's not, but I am wondering, with all the people moving into Livingston, including me in the last 10 years, how are we actually doing? Are we mining our groundwater? It's one thing to keep the reservoirs full. But it's another thing to know, has our groundwater gone down 50 feet? In what wells? Over what period of time? I think the public should know about that because everything we do, from washing clothes to trying to maintain an urban forest, is affected by water. We can't have an urban forest full of elms and basswoods if we can't afford the water. So I'm more worried about not so much the cost of, say, replacing pipes or relining pipes. What I'm worried about is the demand for water and how much can we satisfy and for how long? And has any engineering firm looked at this? And I think the public should have an idea if we're mining groundwater or if we aren't. Hopefully we're not. Hopefully we're blessed with our own aquifer, but it used to say, people used to say, oh, the Ogallala aquifer is never gonna have a problem. And so it's famous last words to say that about any aquifer. But we are fortunate to have what we have. I don't think our price increases are out of line, but boy, if we end up with a real water shortage, the cost is really gonna go up. And if we had to go to the river, that would be even more difficult because every drop of water in the river is probably adjudicated by somebody. So people can drive here, and if they come from Arizona or drive over the river and go, oh, there's tons of water in Livingston. Well, probably not. So that's my comment. I would really like, I noticed in the community journal that there are plans like for this year of how we would handle how the reservoirs would be managed if we had drought.
So we can maybe address a little bit of that after everybody gets a chance. Then we'll address your questions.
But you know what I probably will do is I'll probably write you a letter
Perfect.
summarizing my questions. But I don't think this is gonna go away.
No, I don't think.
We gotta look at it one way or another, and since I live here, I have skin in the game. Water in the game. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on water?
I think he's walking away with the sign.
Oh wait, is that our sign-in sheet?
No, I think.
Oh,
that's just
I think,
the-
no, I think you maybe had a clipboard.
I think we used the
I was like, I think we're good. Anyone else in the room to make comments on water rates? Okay, I don't see anyone in the room, so we'll go ahead and go online. Anyone online? Feel free to either raise your hand or come off mute and give us your name. Okay. One last chance. Anyone online? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. I know Scott left, but I think maybe there were some things you could address that we've got folks online and folks in the room that maybe folks would like to hear about. So do you mind addressing a few of those things?
No, I would absolutely appreciate the opportunity. I think Mr. Carlstrom really raised some valid points in his comments. And I guess I would start by saying that I am in very close conversation with city managers in cities on the other side of the hill, Bozeman and Belgrade specifically. And I can say over the last 20 months, I've learned a lot about their water supplies almost as much as ours. And I think my takeaway from those conversations and those learnings really is that the water supply on this side of Bozeman Pass is significantly different and significantly better than it is on the other side of the pass. And so we benefit really just kind of by our geographic location. That said, We are continually assessing our water supply and our ability to feed the growth that we expect to see in Livingston over the next 20 to 30 years. At this point, our focus in the city is as much on conservation and reduction in usage as it is in new supply, because we know that there are many improvements that we can make. And so whether it is our Parks Division and their active management this year of our irrigation system in a way that we haven't done in the past, or it is notes as in this past week's recent newsletter discussing conservation techniques for residences and business owners, or other municipal projects to replace water lines that otherwise are leaking water. The city is laser focused on conservation at this point. That said, we do recognize that a 7th municipal well is very likely in our future, and we have water rights and locations identified for future municipal wells, and so we are prepared for that eventual need to expand our supply capacity. But that said, we are not there yet, and we have a few more levers to pull on the conservation side of the equation before we need that well. But I do appreciate the comments, and I do largely agree that yes, there is a perception when one drives into Livingston that perhaps our water is limitless, but I can assure you that it is not. And we do appreciate the conservation efforts of all members of the community in helping us stretch our current water supply resources as far as they can go. So.
Thank you. And I would also say, the commission in this last year with the help of Mr. Gager tiered water rates, which we had not done before, in the hopes that would encourage conservation of water. And as well, your team has put in place a drought plan. And this is one of the hottest spells or hottest spells I can remember in a really long time. So as we use more water, we may have some restrictions that may come upon all of us to pay attention to the way that we're using water and the way that we're watering our lawns and whatnot, correct?
That is correct. We've had some internal conversations about potentially moving to stage 2 of our water restrictions, which would limit folks' ability to water during certain hours of the day. And as we were discussing before the meeting, the weather outlook for the next week or two is a little bit dire. So there is a chance that by early August, we may move into our stage 2 water restrictions.
Thank you. Commissioners' deliberation.
Well, I think the number that stuck out that I remember from early June was that 1/3 of our water consumption is wasted into the ground with leaky pipes. And so that's a hell of a lot of water that we're paying for to pump that we're not moving into houses or businesses. So there's a big low-hanging fruit as far as conservation goes. And the reason why I asked if we could print our own money is because we can't pay for that stuff by ourselves. We need our taxpayers to do that. But 24% increases over the last 5 years. It burdens me to put additional pressure on the people of our city that are on fixed incomes or marginalized. And so I'm not a big fan of that. But this is our proverbial rock and hard place. So I have to trust that the water department and the city manager have done their due diligence to get us the absolute best number possible for an increase to accomplish the goals that we need to accomplish. And I feel okay with it.
Okay.
I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons.
Um. I think that. I think this is the third time I've voted on a water rate increase. And I think in the future. It might be helpful. To. If you come back next year with a request to increase water rates. To see kind of what changes, like capital improvements have been made on the system in the meantime. As Commissioner Willich just said, we're losing a lot of water to the ground, back to the ground. And so to just maybe, and I know we heard some of this a few meetings ago, but to present some kind of synthesis of the status of the system. What kind of progress has been made in the year. And how these increases are being reflected into the product that we're providing to the residents would be helpful. If for nothing else, to help residents of Livingston know what they're paying for. Because this is a perennial topic, it's a perennial political pain point. And if we can provide better information as to what folks are paying for, I think that would be appreciated by the commission and by residents. Mr. Gager, you mentioned that we benefit from our geographic location, which I think is undeniably true. But we also benefit in stark contrast to the Gallatin Valley from our built environment. And these are the kinds of conversations that will become more and more challenging the more our built environment starts to look like it does over in the Gallatin Valley. So all of these things are connected. And the fact that we can currently provide water for our citizens is in large part related to the fact that we have a relatively compact, well-designed community. And if we allow for haphazard expansion of the community in a way that doesn't reflect the values of our community, we're going to be paying for it in ways beyond just traffic, beyond just longer lines at the grocery store, but also in terms of water. So just want to give my daily plug to good urban planning as we move forward. But we're benefiting from that today, from those decisions that have been made in the past. One question that I think wasn't answered from the public comment was the status of the aquifer. Mr. Gager, can you speak to that at all?
Commissioner, it is a fantastic question. I don't necessarily know how much analysis we have done internally on aquifer levels. I do believe that that's something that the state tracks a little bit more closely, and I'd be happy to look into that and bring that information back to the commission.
Yeah, and maybe a great time to do that would be if we're talking about stage 2, or is that an administrative process of the stage 2 water restrictions?
So it is an administrative process that actually is tied to the city's ability to fill the reservoirs on the hill and is independent of.
Right, yeah, and I do want to make that clear, where aquifer is where we're pulling water from into those reservoirs. The ability to pull water and fill those reservoirs is kind of the side that the city, that's the input side from the city. But then there's this base below that is beyond the city's control, at least in terms of replenishing. But they're connected but separate. And so I think that, yeah, and any information the commission and or public could have about the status of the aquifer, especially in light of what's going on over the hill, I think would be really useful for all of us.
Thank you. I am going to kind of add on to a few things that Commissioner Lyons said and agree that yes, good urban planning and our compact footprint is saving us, and it will continue to do that. But the more that we sprawl, the less that will happen. It will also cost the city more. I think I said this at the last meeting, but you know, to remember that when we develop further out, yes, developers may pay for that infrastructure to put it in, but then it is left for the rest of us to keep in repair in perpetuity. So the city does not gain from sprawling out and adding further infrastructure out. It costs us more. So I am agreeing with you in good urban planning, and the more that we do, the better, and the more that it will save our tax dollars. So thank you for bringing that up. I am just very thankful that we have good, clean water to drink, and for all of us in this community, for our children and our senior citizens and all of us. I think I've said this before too, but I was away for a little while this spring and in a place where we were paying for city water that we couldn't drink. It is the color of lemonade. And I bought every drop of water that I drank while I was there. So we are very blessed to have good, clean water to drink in this community. And yes, we have to pay for it, but other folks pay for water that they can't drink. So we'll just remind folks of that too. Ready for, and it's expensive, yeah. Are we ready for a vote? Okay, roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
For,
Commissioner Lyons,
For,
Commissioner Lillich.
4.
motion passes. Okay, it is 7:02. So I'm gonna ask if we'd like to take a break, because we're an hour and a half in, and then we can come right back. If so, I need a motion.
I'll move for a 10-minute recess.
Okay, motion by Lyons, second by Willich, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. We will be back in 10 minutes, so we'll be back at 7:13. Thank you, folks. Okay, welcome back, folks. We're gonna go ahead and we'll bring this meeting back to order at 7:13 PM. So let's go ahead and move on to our next action item D. Resolution 5138, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, increasing all rates for all customers of the City of Livingston wastewater system. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before the commission this evening is the second reading of resolution number 5138, which is designed to affect wastewater rates in the city of Livingston. And the recommended increase is 8%, which will translate to a monthly increase of approximately $1.70 to $8.40 per month, depending on the sewer usage of a residence or business. And as noted with the previous item, the rate increase is largely to pay for both operational cost increases as well as planned capital projects in the sewer fund. And a reminder from our previous conversations in earlier meetings, the sewer fund really is the most economically stretched of our enterprise funds. And in the most recent fiscal year, we actually did not carry through a planned capital improvement project in the alley between Main and Second due to a lack of resources in the sewer fund. And so the recommended 8% increase is designed to, again, fund not only operational cost increase, but also capital projects that have been deferred because we do recognize the value of maintaining a state of good repair in our infrastructure. And so Director Federhoff and I will stand for any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you. Commissioners.
Mr. Gager, what is the most expensive non-labor cost for the water treatment plant?
It is electricity in the water treatment plant.
Again, and by a lot. And that is the only question I have. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lyons.
I do remember this from last year, miraculously. But for the sake of folks paying attention, could you remind us how we measure sewer usage from at a household level?
Fantastic question. And so we actually monitor water usage from, I believe, November through April of every year and use that amount to estimate the summer usage because we recognize that in the summer, folks are also irrigating their lawns and there are other non-consumable uses. And so we do not charge people the corresponding sewer for their water consumption in the summer.
My intention of asking that question was just to have you say that. But it actually spurred another question in my mind, which was, I know that there are some uses in town that, where there's a lot more activity in the summer than in the winter time. Is there a way to capture that? So for example, if a house is Airbnb'd and the market is much busier in the summertime, are they paying for sewer usage based on their occupancy in the winter?
In that specific case, I was actually going to add the clarifier that methodology is really more employed on the residential side of the house than on the commercial side of the house. But in that specific instance, unless I'm mistaken, then yeah, those people would actually yield that benefit by virtue of being busier in the summer than in the winter, because we don't track the use of houses, whether it's owner occupied, long-term rental, short-term rental. And so, yeah, that is an interesting observation, Commissioner.
That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Geiger, stormwater, does that fall under sewer? And if that is the case, then I know as we get closer to 10,000 people in population, we have to do better with the way that we mitigate and move our stormwater. Is that correct?
Yes, when we reach a population of 10,000 under the census, then we have a limited amount of time to be compliant with what's colloquially known as MS4, which is municipal separate sanitary and sewer system. And so, and that's a requirement of the Federal Clean Water Act. And so we are fast approaching that. Our internal expectation is that the 2030 census, we expect to be at or above 10,000. And so we're actively planning for that. Currently, stormwater improvements are funded through a combination of methods, but sewer and street and general fund are some of those methods. You may recall that we, in my time here, had a conversation about a stormwater preliminary environmental report or engineering report, excuse me. And that work is ongoing. We also, you may recall, last November, we signed a data sharing agreement with Headwaters Economics. And since that time, myself and Shannon Holmes, the Public Works Director, have been working with the team from Headwaters Economics to do some financial assessments on a potential stormwater utility, which would really create a fee that would fund some of those stormwater improvements. And so that work is ongoing, and I do expect later this fiscal year that we will have some materials and a presentation to bring to the commission regarding the creation of a stormwater utility to help fund some of those stormwater projects. Because those projects, aside from being federally mandated once we hit 10,000, really actually have some fantastic benefits for the community, not just for water quality in the Yellowstone, but also water quality in the lagoon. In Sacagawea and Miles Park, because much of the water that makes its way there has been affected by stormwater and stormwater runoff. And so it really is a fairly exciting initiative that we're working on for the city.
Great, thank you for that update. Any other questions, commissioners? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve resolution number 5138 and authorize the chair to sign.
A motion by Lyons. Do I have a second?
Second it?
Second by Willich. We'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. So we'll start in the room. Anyone in the room want to make public comment on resolution 5138? I'm the right one. I think I meant the one back one. Excuse me. Let me amend. Nope, that's right. Yep, 5138. Yep, 5138. Anyone in the room? It's just coming up.
Tricia Grable, 204 East Calendar. I just want to underscore a couple of things that the commissioner said, and I am just so grateful. Finally, we have a commission that understands that our branching out into subdivisions, that's spreading subdivisions costs the people in Livingston additional money. I think that is something we have to take into consideration when we take a look at water, sewer, and garbage, all those factors. And I'm just so grateful that this is a commission that has understood that. I've known that for years and advocated for that for years. The other thing is, in compliance with the growth policy, of course, the downtown is the center from which, with smart growth, you grow out from. And if the downtown is viable and working well, then everything else in the growth policy works well. I will say one thing, which is kudos to those people who built Livingston to start with. I have a large building in Livingston, and when came to finding, I thought that the sewer lines from the Grable were in a different place, and that they were in fact deteriorating. And then I had a professional come in and take a look at, run a pipe into our sewer lines. And 130 years later, they are doing very well. And they were well designed. It is not the design of these sewer lines in downtown Livingston that is a problem. It is the jerry rigging, and that's true with the plumbing in the building too. It wasn't the design of any of these buildings downtown. They were quite remarkable in their design. But the jerry rigging that followed in both the plumbing and the sewer lines then became a problem. But I just wanted to commend one, say, if, as someone who's really done research on this, our downtown has been extremely well designed. And I want to say, commend the commission on their understanding. And also I as a downtown building owner in business, I had the Downtown Building Owner Business Association for the last 18 years. I really want to say that growing north is to everyone's advantage in terms of the direction in which Livingston grows. And of course, coming out of Green Acres, by the way, I think it was 200 gallons a minute from Green Acres. That's remarkable. One other quick thing I want to commend people on it that we don't think of is about 20 years ago, Park County Environmental Council began the process of cleaning up carcinogenic plume. I went to every single meeting of the cleanup of the carcinogenic plume, and I want to commend this city as we look at all these utilities to remember that we did an amazing job, and we have a hero that we have not given thanks to. Her name is Amy Reynolds, and for 8 years, that woman was one of the brightest people I ever knew, and she was part of the cleanup of the carcinogenic plume. So
Thank you,
we're
Patricia.
going in the right direction. Thank you.
Anyone else online? Anyone online like to make public comments on resolution 5138? Feel free to come off mute and say your name. I don't see anyone. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioners deliberation.
Well, I still don't like raising rates, but I feel again that
Mhm.
it's done in the best of. In the best mind for what we need to do to move forward. And also I remember a conversation of infill of the groundwater that we're leaking out of our pipes is now going into the sewer and
Mhm.
taxing our fairly new wastewater treatment plant.
Mhm.
So upgrades on both sides, in and out. It's a holistic system, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to upgrade. And maintain, so, yeah, I mean, this is the way to do it. I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons?
I think Commissioner Willich said it all.
I will agree. I remember the pictures from the Public Works Department that came and showed us the leaking pipes. And we certainly don't want sewage leaking into the Yellowstone River. We have a responsibility to everyone downstream from us. Since we are the headwaters of the longest undammed river in the country, we need to take care of it. So,
Here.
ready for a vote? Roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
4.
Commissioner Lyons,
Or
Commissioner Willich.
4.
Motion carries. All right, one more in this genre of things. This is action item E, resolution 5139, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, increasing the rate for collection and disposal of solid waste in the amount of 5% per month for residential and commercial customers to become effective July 2024. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you, as you noted, is resolution 5139 to increase the solid waste rates in a manner similar to the last two actions, and the recommended increase is 5%, and on a residential blue can, that will translate to an additional $1.20 per month, rising from $24 to $25.20 per month. And the funding here, as you know, goes to support both the operations and the capital in the department. And we recently authorized the purchase of a new garbage truck, whose delivery has been unfortunately delayed by the manufacturer. We do expect that vehicle to arrive here in the next week or so. And that really is a result of some equipment issues that we had last Labor Day that have actually continued to plague us since then. And so we are optimistic that this increase in the solid waste rates will help us address some of those equipment-driven service concerns and continue to provide a high level of service to the community. So with that said, Director Federhoff and I will stand for any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, clarifying questions. Mr. Willett?
Right.
I have one, and it's related to my question from the last topic. Is there any precedent for assessing these fees by usage? So, for example, I'm not trying to save money, but I don't have to take my trash can out every Tuesday. And I'm wondering if there are any examples in other cities where where it's more of a usage based instead of a monthly assessed flat fee.
So in the city of Livingston, our commercial customers are actually charged based on weight. And so we do have that ability. Our current fleet of trucks does have a scale mechanism on the arm that helps us weigh cans as they go in. So that rolling that out, we have approximately 3,300 residential units in the city of Livingston. So there would be a level of administrative complexity involved in rolling that out, but it is certainly something that is doable. We have also had some internal conversations, in part driven by some public comment that we've received here at the meeting about potentially using smaller cans. There are 25-gallon cans that typically work with some of the equipment that we have that are available in other communities, including my communities in Montana. So we have explored potentially a different can size for people that might be in the commissioner's position.
So, and I will clarify the reasoning behind this would be similar to our tiered water rates of trying to incentivize a certain behavior. We pay a lot for dealing with that trash. And a way to pay less for dealing with that trash would be to incentivize producing less trash. So that, just to be clear, that's kind of the motivation for that question.
Yeah, I really actually appreciate that, Commissioner, and please know, you, Commissioner Lyons and Chair Kell may recall our conversations from approximately a year ago, and you may as well, Commissioner Willich, where we had talked about reviewing the overall solid waste operation and specifically the hauling from the transfer station out
Yeah.
through the landfill. Please know that analysis is ongoing, and items like smaller cans and different rate systems and scales are conversations that are actively ongoing internally.
Great, and I don't discount the potential administrative burden, and we're thinking about ways to be more sustainable and in terms of the environment and in terms of our budget. That's kind of the theme tonight. And producing an overwhelming administrative burden is a great way to counteract any financial benefits of producing less trash. So I respect the weight of adding additional administrative burden to staff. But just something that comes to mind when we're talking about funding this operation. Yeah.
Great thoughts. I love that. And I know Commissioner, I know, Mr. Deidre, that you and I at least, and I think maybe some other commissioners off and on have talked about the potential of still looking at doing some kind of composting in the city, and I hope that those conversations will continue. Because that would be a way to haul less so far away, right? So.
Absolutely. Composting is a conversation that the Public Works Director and I have, and really, for those people that deal with solid waste, it is very clear that reducing the amount of waste really is kind of in the best interest of the entire system. And as much as we can divert from the landfill, we certainly are supportive of those efforts.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 5139 and authorize the chair to sign.
Motion by Lyons, with a second.
I will second that.
Have a second by Willich. We'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. Anyone in the room like to make public comment? Please come up to the podium. All right, we'll go online. Anyone online would like to make public comment on resolution 5139? Feel free to come off mute, say your name if you'd like. One more time, any public comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioners' deliberation. Anything, Commissioner Welch?
No, I think maybe a little bit, but I think I'd like to say some ways of, I mean, obviously we have these disposal fees that are expensive to the tune of about $1 million a year, just shy. And then recycling fees of about $50,000 a year, which I believe a lot of that is, I think taking the glass to Four Corners for that. I think we pay 200 some odd dollars of,
Glass and cardboard are those two
right?
expenses there.
Yeah, it'd be nice to explore some revenue streams for that material. I mean, glass is. I don't know, it's pretty hard to recycle it and there's not a whole lot of demand for it, but. I know there should be a way to find something for it, but it doesn't add much to the conversation right this moment as far as the budget for this, or the rate hikes go for this. No, I don't have anything else I want to add to that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lane?
Nothing.
Okay. I don't think I have anything either, so let's just roll call.
Chair Hill,
Four,
Commissioner Lyons,
Or
Commissioner Willis.
Or,
motion carries. Okay, moving along, now we are at action item F, which is discussion of the city commission listening sessions. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item currently is back before you.
Okay.
And from the last meeting, and we had a good session at the farmer's market last month with some commissioners, and then there was also the commissioner listening session that I believe the chair and Commissioner Willich participated in. And so as we move forward, we had previously identified opportunities on July 17th, August 14th, and September 11th for commissioners to attend the farmer's market to hear from the community. And then we had also identified possibly listening sessions on Saturday, July 27th, and also Saturday, August 24th, again, as opportunities for the commission to hear directly from the public. So at this time, I guess I would welcome direction from any commissioners on their availability for the dates noted.
Okay, so it looks like, because we do still have some filled in here, Commissioner Lyons is available this week at the farmer's market,
yes, and I am not available on the 24th
not on the 24th, okay.
or that July one either.
Okay, and then Commissioner Schwartz is available for the 27th, the listening session, which is a Saturday, so Saturday listening session on July 27th. I did ask Commissioner Newts if she would be available for anything, and she thought she might be available for September 11th. So I would say let's just go ahead and like pencil her in for that. I am not available on the 27th. It's an actual weekend that we're going to go away at camp, which is like my one weekend of the summer. I don't know if anyone else wants to join. I mean, Commissioner Willich, you just did a Saturday, so I understand if you don't want to do another Saturday, that is totally fine. Is there anything, anywhere else in here you want to fit in at this point? I guess is what I'll ask anybody at this, yeah.
I'd like to try for a farmer's market.
Okay,
But I think the 14th would be.
14th will work for you?
For me,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
But I gotta get on the river on Saturday.
Yeah, I can we put a maybe on the August 24th for me? And I think we should check in with Commissioner Schwartz to see how comfortable he is going alone or not. So is that helpful at all?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Would you mind checking with him about the 27th, July 27th? The only other thing that I would say on the Saturday, I would say the sooner we can maybe let folks know what's happening, the better.
Yeah.
So, and the location. So, so July 27th, August 14th, September 11th, farmer's market, there will be a tent. And there will be a commissioner there on those 3 nights, so please feel free to plan for that. And then we will keep the public informed about the 2 Saturdays. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Anything else, commissioners? Good.
I thought it was a value.
Can you tell that I schedule meetings for work?
Right.
I thought it was a value too. Yes, on the Saturday. That'd be fun. Okay, so we'll move from that. So now what we're gonna do is I am going to now bring up consent items. Okay, so we're going backwards on the agenda. And so I will say to the commissioners, is there any consent items you would like pulled?
I would like to pull items H, I, and J, please.
H, I, and J, okay. We will do that. Commissioner Lyons, anything you need pulled?
No.
Okay, I would entertain a motion for the rest.
I'll move to approve consent items A through G.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Lyons and a second by Willich. All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Willich, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, I just want to make sure
Yes.
things, okay, that passed, okay. So Commissioner Willich, now I'll ask you, we pulled H, I, and J, do we need to take them individually? Look at them each individually,
H and I are just clerical
okay?
things to go through. Let's see, H is the actuarial contract. I had noticed that I think it was the address in the agreement is for the old business office.
Do you know what page that was on?
Yeah, where did I see that? I know I saw that. Which one of these parts? I could be.
I think
incorrect.
I is the incorrect address.
Was I the incorrect
With
address?
the one with LHC, excuse me, J is the correct.
Okay, so I apologize. I pulled H inappropriately.
Okay, so we'll just set that to the side, we
That
can
one to the
vote on it, okay, yep.
There was a question that I had about the difference between the total cost and the proposal price with there's a $3,000 discount,
Mhm.
but the actual cost is actually $6,331 less than the 323. And so I was asking about the discrepancy of the 3331. Good signature.
I appreciate you recognizing that, Commissioner. I have spoken to Hughes Fire Equipment. They have confirmed that our list price, or excuse me, the price we will pay is the $317,336. The additional discounts are related to the inspection trips because this vehicle has already been constructed. We will not do factory assurance inspection. And so that was the difference there. And while it references $1,500 per traveler per trip for the inspection, there were some other costs there. And so our cost out the door will be the $317,336.
Copy that. Thank you very much, sir.
And then you said.
And then J.
J.
The question I have with J, well, there's a question. First is in the general services agreement on page 65. That's where it's at 414 East Calendar Street. And that should be changed to 220 East Park. I guess I have a question about what is the cause of the cost increase from 500 to 1250 a month? Is there something that's causing that to go 2.5 times up?
There are several things. One, that cost was established 40 years ago. And so I guess let's just back this up a moment if I could. This contract really is to fund the medical director services from the hospital. And so all of our paramedics actually operate under the emergency medical license of the medical director.
Sure.
And so we also operate under their insurance as well. And so much of the cost increase actually is related to the insurance rates increasing over the last 4 years.
And that makes perfect sense. Okay, thank you very much. Those are all the questions that I had.
And I will just chime in, I am shocked that we had a medical director that was working for $500 a month, quite frankly, for this time. When I read that, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, so.
Certainly appreciative of Dr.
Yeah.
Wright for that.
Bill
low
is screaming
rate.
deal.
Okay. all your questions are answered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is what I'm gonna recommend. I'm gonna recommend that perhaps we do H, if we would like, you could do H and I together in a motion. We'll do J separately because we need to make the edit.
Sure,
Does that make sense?
sure. I make a motion to approve H and I.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Willich and a second by Lyons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, so now, Jay, if you, Commissioner Willich would like to make the motion and just, add that edit in your motion.
I move to approve contract 20097 and authorize the city manager to sign with the edit on page 65, that the address of 414 East Calendar Street, Livingston, Montana 59047 be changed to 220 East Park Street, Livingston, Montana 59047.
Second.
Motion by Willich and a second by Lyons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, so now, Mr. Gager, there are three of us here this evening. Do you want to do closed session or would you rather punt until our next meeting?
We have nothing of urgency to talk about with regard to litigation strategy, so I'm happy to defer this to the next meeting.
We go with that, commissioners?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so we'll defer. That moves us to city manager comments. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, commissioners, for a very productive evening. I appreciate passing the budget and being able to have a path forward. Wanted to provide you an update on some recent grant applications. As I noted earlier in the meeting, yesterday, seems like a long time ago, yesterday morning does, but the city received word from the state that our crisis diversion grant request to help support the mobile crisis response team was approved. And so we are actively moving forward in that regard. We have some more operational questions to answer, but we are very close to doing so. And so I do expect that you folks will see some contracts related to mobile crisis response coming your way in the next several months. Similarly, the city was notified, I believe last week, that we were awarded a $40,000 grant from the Montana Coal Endowment. And those funds will be used on a water preliminary engineering report for regional water system out in the Montague and Sleeping Giant and Green Acres neighborhoods. That is where we recently completed the regional sewer project. And as you may recall, there are several residences out there in those neighborhoods that are not on our water system. And so this really is the second piece of that work. And I mention this because this was a question that came up very early in my tenure when the regional sewer project kicked off. So we do expect that we will have a similar regional water project here in several years that will bring those members of the community fully onto our system. And so with the good news also comes the bad news. We learned about 2 weeks ago now that the city did not receive a RAISE grant award in this most recent round. And so the staff and I have spent some time examining our opportunities to move forward with a grade separated rail crossing in the city of Livingston. And in spite of our non-award this year, I will say that I do remain optimistic on the project. Anecdotally, I can tell you that one of the projects, one of the few grade separation projects that was funded nationwide was one in Santa Ana, California, that I actually in 2010 was the contracting officer that awarded and managed the contract for the alternatives analysis project on that grade separation project. It was one of 6 that we did that year. And so I very distinctly and clearly recall that alternatives analysis procurement and the process that followed. And we'll be using that internally as a blueprint for this project because it may have taken 14 years for that project to move from the ideation and alternatives analysis phase to construction, but it still moved forward in that time. And so we will be using that experience internally to help guide our process on this project while it's a different project in a different town in different states. Fundamentally, create separated rail crossing, is the same no matter where it is. So, I do look forward to moving that forward, for the community. So, again, we expect a hot week next week. Everybody stay cool, stay safe, and, try to conserve water and have fun where you can. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner comments, Commissioner Willich.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Gager. Bummer to hear about the railroad crossing, but we will continue with that. I promise. So the reason why I harped on electricity today, with our rate increases and conversations, because for the two departments that I brought them up with, that line item is actually a very substantial proportion of the cost. And I don't know about anybody else's houses or what you have or what you do, but energy is a substantial part of my monthly costs. And we are all, I think, in the same boat. At least most of us are in the same boat as far as who we get our energy from. So that being said, a 25% rate increase was approved earlier this year to begin next year in August. And that was approved through the Montana State Public Utilities Commission, I believe is what it's called. And that affects all of us. And just 5 days ago, the same company requested an interim rate hike of another 9% to fill the gap between now and August. And so I'm going to point the boogeyman I'm going to point the finger at the boogeyman, which is our power is getting absurdly expensive. And there doesn't seem to be too much desire to pump the brakes on this type of thing. And so I'd like to direct the ire of people that are feeling this, not to us. I can't do anything about it. The city employees can't do anything about it. This is a force that's put down upon us. I would recommend writing letters and calling your public service, the public utilities commission, folks on that, and people at Northwestern Energy they're employees as well, but they are our power provider, energy provider. And so, that's a huge portion of what we have to do is pay for those bills. And when I look at it, the water department, that's $280,000 a year in electricity and gas. That's the next closest line item, I think, is a quarter of that. And so when costs go up, that's a huge portion of it, 25% of that next year. So, it's unfortunate, but we can't do anything about that. Although we can collectively, and we can make a lot of stink about it for sure. So, I feel the people of the city of Livingston, I feel the rate increases, I feel the pressure, and I just want to commiserate for a moment. And we're all in it together. So I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons.
Thank you. I think for a reasonable consideration on this side of the table and on that side of the table of one of the least fun votes that we have to do every year related to rate increases. The budget vote is fun in some ways, I guess. And congrats to Mr. Gager on getting another successful budget process through. It's a huge task, Mr. Gager and his staff. It's a huge task. It's really important. And we appreciate the effort that goes into it. Yield.
Thank you. First, I would, bouncing off of what Commissioner Willich said, yes, Public Rates Commission, I bet there's a meeting on that, and I bet you can show up and make a comment either in person or online. I've taken friends to Helena to do that in the past, so the more people that turn up and make comment and make their voices heard, sometimes things can change. So I would encourage everyone to do that.
Mhm.
I am really just thankful for this community and that we can sit here and that we can sit on this side of the table and the community can sit on the other, and we can have public discourse appropriately and kindly and safely. So I would just like to thank this community for that. I've seen some crazy things happen in the last week and more, so I appreciate our community and our ability to have public discourse that is kind and safe and appropriate. Thank you to Mr. Geiger and his staff for an incredible budget again this year. I'm excited for the things that we're gonna be able to accomplish within that budget. You're right, budget is fun. It's cool. Exciting to see where our community is heading. So thank you, everyone. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Alliance. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Willich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 7:57. Thank you, everyone.
Second that.